Welcome everyone, good morning, good afternoon and good evening to you all, and thanks for joining the IYCN Global Women's Breakfast today on the theme of women leadership and mentoring. My name is Thorsten John, I am the chair of the IYCN, and we'll start with a short introduction about today's program. We will first have the main part of today will be the panel, where we have 4 excellent speakers from Australia, the US, the UK, and South Africa, which will all provide some insights into leadership and mentoring of women. This will be followed by a discussion and question and answer session, which will be led by Tracy Lau and Eva Anderle, who are also assisting in the introduction of the speakers today. This will be ended with some closing remarks. The IYCN, which is the host of the, today's webinar, is the International Younger Chemists Network. It's an associated organization of IUPAC since 2017, and we have the mission to connect and empower younger chemists globally. Our goal is really to organize events and projects that support and advocate for younger scientists around the world that work towards a globally sustainable future. We do a lot of different projects on sustainability, outreach, science for policy, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. And if you're interested to get involved or attend further of our events, you can either become a member, which is for free, or you can visit our webpage, iwycnglobal.com, or follow us on social media. But without further ado, I want to start the topic today and the goals of the breakfast. So really the goal of this event, which takes place every year in February, is to celebrate women in science, to build a global network to close a gender gap in science, to inspire younger generations and help in supporting to build professional development. The question is, of course, why do we need to break barriers in science? And a lot of research has also shown that diverse teams lead to happier, more creative and productive workplaces. And as a consequence, diverse and supportive workplaces also celebrate women and historically marginalized communities, which further retains them in the system. In science, scientists of different disciplines will help in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now we will go to the speakers, and Eva, I think, will help me, or will start with the introduction of the first speaker.
Yes, thank you very much, Thorsten, and also thank you everyone for joining from my side. I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker for today, Dr. Mary Garson. She is an emeritus professor at the University of Queensland and founder of the Global Women's Breakfast. Dr. Garson graduated from Cambridge and was a research fellow in Rome, Cambridge and North Queensland before having positions at the University of Wollongong and the University of Queensland. She has been a member of the IUPAC Division 3 and also a division president, and currently she chairs the Committee for Ethics, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion for IUPAC. She has won several prizes and she has already delivered several talks today at different continents, and we are very happy that she's willing to be here and to give us some further insights.
Okay, thank you very much, Eva, and thank you to IYCN for asking me to give a talk. It's very late at night for me, so I've kept it very simple. Thorsten is going to show my slides for me. So welcome to the IUPAC Women's Global Breakfast. Today we're talking about leadership and mentoring. I'm going to focus on mentoring. I'm going to tell you about the things that I thought it would have been nice to have known when I started my career many years ago. And I'm not going to talk so much about leadership. I hope that others will do that. But of course, let's not forget that leadership is about empowering the science of the future. Thorsten, would you like to move on to the next? Okay, all right, just a couple of pictures I'll go through very quickly. When I was a student in Cambridge, I was one of very few women, but Cambridge is a residential university. So if you look at the picture at the bottom left, I went home every night to a community of strong women a community where scholarship was valued and knowledge was valued. And that has stayed with me throughout my academic career. I took a lot of time off. I enjoyed spending time on the water. And if you look at the picture on the right, it's me and my twin sister. So I'm going to leave you with a little question. You can work out which one of these two is me and which one is my twin sister. Let's move on to the next picture, please. So after, I spent 9 years in Cambridge, wonderful place, but time to leave. And I did a postdoc in Rome. I worked in industry. And then if we move to the next picture, Torsten, you'll see that I decided to have a big career change. In Cambridge, I had studied organic chemistry. I worked on how natural products are manufactured by fungi. And when I moved to Australia, I dropped in right into the deep end and decided to look at how marine natural products are produced. And one of the first challenges that I had to do was that I had to learn to scuba dive, which in my case actually meant pretty much learning how to swim confidently. So message number one, you never stop learning how to do new things. Let's move on to the next picture. And eventually, I've ended up becoming more Australian than English, and I'm the Australian representative in IUPAC, and I really enjoy the work that I do on behalf of the organisation. Now let's have a little think about mentoring. So we move to the next picture. I've only got 3 slides here. My PhD advisor mentored me in ways that I did not recognise at the time. I didn't really have a plan. The reasons why I came to Australia were personal, and because of that, I needed to find a job. So I wrote a research proposal and I ended up doing marine science. But it was kind of a little bit opportunistic. But I sensed the opportunity and the passion and the excitement and the potential of what I was doing in Australia. So look for those opportunities. I explained to you that I had to grow my skills and moved into a completely new research field, but I was applying the experimental techniques that I'd learned in Cambridge to just a new chemical problem. My entire research career, particularly since I came to Australia, has been about a range of experiences, and collaboration has been very, very important. Collaborating into the marine science community, collaborating with computational chemists. Collaboration is about teamwork, and I spotted that Torsten popped up a thing about teamwork, more productive, more creative. That's absolutely the case. So always look back on an experience and reflect and try and learn something from it, good and bad, and apply that to best effect. And I think one of the most important things that you as a young scientist can learn at this stage is how to be persuasive, how to communicate your potential and get that passion and that productivity and that extra spark about you across to the person who might be sitting at the other side of the table wanting to offer you a job or a research fellowship. Let's move on to the next picture. Torsten, thank you. So I moved to Australia. I really didn't know what I was doing when I moved into marine science. It was important to be brave and say, I'm going to get this to work. So the word I didn't know at that stage was resilience. And looking back, I realized that that's what I had. I don't quite know where I learned it, but it really is important. And to grow a network of colleagues, as I had to do in Australia, and I acknowledged that there were a lot of people who recognized that I'd come from a different box of chemistry, but I was trying to do something novel and trying to do it independently, and they were prepared to support me. And so don't think too much about entitlement and what you should expect others to do for you. I think if you stay focused and committed on the tasks in hand, and don't worry too much about the financial rewards, they will come later on. Things will go very well for you. And in my case, I found joining a professional association, initially the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, having been a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, but then more recently IUPAC, and of course in your case, joining IYCN is a critical part of that networking. And down at the bottom, the piece of advice that I should have had when I was younger, but I didn't have, it's so important. Writing becomes so much easier if you practice writing every day. I've got one more final picture, which is really, if Torsten would like to just move on, which is really what we elders have to think about. Mentoring is a reciprocal process. The mentee gives something to the relationship as well. And not all mentoring relationships work really well. Sometimes there's just a slight mismatching between the mentor and the mentee. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to have a team of mentors who will be helping to look after you. A good mentor will encourage collaboration and team building and encourage you to find other people in your network who can assist you. And I think it's important to recognize work-life balance, different workday schedules. I'm a lark. I don't like being an owl. So this late at night doesn't generally appeal to me, but work to your strengths in terms of those timelines. We don't have time to talk about it in detail, but I'm one of these people who thinks that part-time work is perfectly fine, and nobody should ever discourage you if you think that that's what you should be doing at that time in your life, particularly if you have family and or carer duties. As leaders and as seniors in the field, one of the things that I would like to make sure happens a lot more is that when research grants are written, the grant recipients not only identify the research outcomes, but because so much of the research funding is going to be used to support students and postdocs, that there is an active comment about how the grant recipient is providing career development, not just numbers of publications, number of students graduated, but much more informative and evidential information about mentoring outcomes. And that's going to require sector change. So I think, Torsten, with that, I should finish and allow you to get on to the other speakers. And I will attempt to stay awake to join the panel at the end of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garson. This was very interesting. As a next speaker, we have Dr. Angeliki Rigos. She is Associate Director for Graduate Programs at the MIT Energy Initiative and President and CEO of IPAC. She studied at Cornell University, MIT, Northeastern University, and HCRS Denver. She then worked as a principal scientist at Physical Science Inc. And in academia as an assistant and associate professor at Merrimack College. She also worked at Leviton and Associates as an energy consultant, has been a visiting scientist at MIT, Harvard, and Northeastern University, and does a lot of volunteering work, for example, as an industry mentor in Cleantech Open and an industry champion as Mass Challenge. So thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Rigos, and we're looking forward to your contribution.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Torsten, for inviting me. I need to share my slides now somehow. Okay, show my screen. Can you see it? I can't see it though.
We can see it.
We can see it.
I'm not seeing my screen at all. Let's see, how do I change that? I'm not seeing the screen. This is very interesting. Okay, I'm just gonna move it along here and hopefully you can see this. Can you see this now, moving along?
Yeah, it's in presentation mode now.
Okay, great. I'd like to say I'm very excited to be here because I haven't really engaged very much with this community before, and it's exciting to have an international community. I'm going to talk a little bit about inclusive leadership, which is what I teach both at MIT and at Episteme, which is the nonprofit I created to take the MIT course on leadership globally to women in STEM. So to begin with, it's really our biases and our prejudices which are keeping us from really being more effective in everything that we do. And I like this quote by Audre Lorde: "It's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." There's a great article that I encourage people to read, which defines in a very simple way, what it means to be an inclusive leader. So you really need 6 aspects. The first one is humility, to be modest about your capabilities and admit your mistakes. And then the other part is making space for others, because oftentimes we're so busy talking about our own opinion that we don't listen to others enough. Collaboration, that was discussed earlier. Effective collaboration means to empower the others and to really acknowledge and appreciate the diversity of thinking that they bring, and also provide psychological safety so that the team can be more productive. As a leader, you have to show visible commitment. You really have to let everyone know that you're committed to this diversity. And we'll talk a little bit about this more later on. And challenging the status quo, which was discussed in the earlier talk as well, making changes so that diversity is something that really takes hold of the organization where you are. Cultural interest, being really attentive to the fact that we all come from different cultures and backgrounds, and so be respectful of that. Curiosity about others, to have this open mindset and really try to learn from other people, because no matter who they are, I find no matter who I have a conversation with, I'm always going to learn something new, and sometimes the most important things I learn are from the most unexpected places. So being empathetic with the other person is a really great way for you to grow, because you're going to learn something very important. And then the last but not least, the most challenging of all, is awareness of our biases. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how you get over these blind spots, both within yourself and the system. So I'm starting with awareness of bias because I think it's the most important aspect of being an inclusive leader. As a leader, we have to challenge our own biases all the time, and developing our self-awareness. When I teach self-awareness in my leadership course, the 2 ways to become more self-aware are indirectly. You have to look at reflections, how other people see you, and ask for feedback. The second point is, are we encouraging others to become aware of their own biases? So we can do that by example. If we're a leader, we can admit, oh wow, I messed up here, and so I'm going to try to do better next time. And then the biggest thing is, when we make decisions, we should check to make sure that the decisions or actions are not biased. So for example, when we're interviewing a group of candidates, how do we do that? Do we have a system that we use that is, not biased? And there are a lot of ways to do that now. That's becoming a bigger thing, and I've been doing it for a long time now. And the reason we have bias is because we each see the world differently. And the reason we have to get rid of this bias as a leader is that we need to connect with all types of peoples. And when we have biases, then we actually aren't able to do that. So that's a really important aspect. Unfortunately, because we are programmed to survive, we have developed unconscious biases because they save us. They're a danger detector, and they give us an automatic response in the moment of crisis. So one way to slow down the bias problem is to spend more time making a decision. Don't make quick decisions, but slow down your decision. The other thing that happens is when we become afraid, then again, our biases pop up. And I'm from Greece, so I always, instead of using the iceberg, I like to use the island. So our unconscious bias is a part of the island that's below the surface. And we have to develop cultural intelligence, knowing ourselves, knowing others, and knowing how to bridge the differences, right? And build on the similarities. So finding that common ground is really important. And of course, I said, as a leader, you have to express your visible commitment. And that also means that you don't want to be silent, because when you are silent and things go on, then other people think it's okay. The last important thing as an inclusive leader is we want to be an upstander. And what that means is if you see something that's going on that's wrong, you just don't walk away or pretend you didn't see it or think somebody else is going to take care of it. You want to bring this problem to everyone's attention and say, wow, I noticed that this happened. You know, what's going on here? Or we don't use this term anymore. And then last but not least, I want to end with women and leadership bias. So as leaders, women are supposed to be warm and nice, and not so much strong and tough. So there's this balance between how am I supposed to behave as a woman leader. So these four paradoxes are something that any woman who's growing, you know, moving up in her career is going to have to face. Am I going to be demanding or caring or something in the middle, authoritative or participative, maintaining distance and approachable, self-centered and serving others? So these four aspects are things that we as women leaders are going to have to struggle with, and we have to find our own path here. There's no recipe where I can tell you what to do. So last, how do you become a champion of inclusive behavior? You first of all ask other colleagues who are from different backgrounds how you can support them. Share the unwritten rules or how things are done in your organization or group. Build an environment of trust and respect so people can feel comfortable asking questions. Speak up when something inappropriate is said. Create opportunities for people to work on important projects if they haven't had that opportunity before. And then last but not least is be open to new approaches. We're often so stuck in our own ways that we aren't so open to new ideas. And so my last picture, there's this great book called The Next IQ, The Inclusive Quotient. And this basically tells us, I work at the MIT Energy Initiative. Our mission is to accelerate the energy transition. And so we are really trying to get people to work better together. That's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about teaching leadership, because we don't have time to waste. We need to work and get better solutions. And our solutions are going to be better if we are using the sum of all the intelligences that are available to us. And with that, I'm just going to stop sharing and let someone move on. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Rigos. Now I would like to give the word to Tracy.
Thanks, Eva. Thank you, Dr. Rigos, for your inspirational messages. I'm now going to introduce our next speaker. It is Dr. Jessica Wade. She is currently a research fellow at Imperial College London and is a member of the Wise Young Professionals Board. Dr. Wade is working in the Department of Materials at the Imperial College London. Her research considers new materials for optoelectronic devices with a focus on chiral organic semiconductors and how to optimize these chiral systems such that they can absorb or emit circularly polarized light, as well as transport spin polarized electrons. Outside of the lab, she is also involved with several science communication and outreach initiatives. She is committed to improving diversity in science, both online and offline. Thank you so much. She will now present.
Awesome. I'm trying to work out how you present on GoToMeeting. Okay, let's see. Okay, something's happening. I don't know what. Oh my gosh, it's very stressful. I'll try it again. If it doesn't work, then I'll give up and I'll just speak. Because everyone's, I have to quit and reopen PowerPoint. Apologies for this seamless change.
No worries.
Anyway, I can, in the meantime, tell you that I haven't been a member of the Wise Young Women's Board for a very, very long time, but I'm happy that you left that in. Okay, let's see. Open system preferences. I've given the system preferences. Sorry, GoToMeeting is not one that I usually. Okay, I think I may not be able to do it without quitting this, but let's see. Can you now? Is it seeing anything?
Still nothing.
It's just saying at the top on my screen, waiting to view Jessica Wade's screen.
How exciting is that? Let's see if you can see.
Did you get a pop-up asking what to share?
I've had an awful lot of pop-ups. I've accepted all of them, but then it said that I'd have to quit and restart. Let's see. Oh, look at that. That might help.
Yeah, it's working now.
That works. That's full screen. Yeah. Okay, all right. Hi everyone, my name's Jess, and that was all right. You had that great introduction about me. I work on chiral carbon-based semiconductors. These are materials that are semiconductors, so they're a kind of more environmentally friendly and more tunable variant of silicon. We can use them for photovoltaics and for solar cells. One of the exciting things about the molecules that I work with is that they're chiral, so they exist as a pair of non-superimposable mirror images, like your left and your right hand. Chirality is a massively interesting property of chemistry. I'm sure lots of you have heard of it or have at least thought about it. It manifests across multiple different length scales in the human and the human-made and the naturally occurring world. So in the subatomic scale, in the molecular scale, and in things like shells or the twisted barks of wisteria. I'm kind of interested in this molecular scale in the middle. Now, when you think about chirality, you often think about how it interfaces with things like drug design or the design of fragrances. And that's because lots of biological mechanisms have this kind of lock and key interaction where you have to think about the handedness of your receptor and also whatever you're putting into that receptor. But what we're doing at Imperial is trying to use chirality to control the efficiency of state-of-the-art displays, to control spin state for things like spintronics in quantum computing, and then also to detect magnetic fields. But alongside that, I truly believe that we all have this big responsibility in trying to make science a better and a more inclusive place. I've been trying for kind of since my PhD and then throughout my postdoc to do that, recognizing the extraordinary privilege I have to study where I do. Just to give you some context for the demographics of who studies chemistry in the UK, at undergraduate, we actually have a pretty good representation of women. And that's because in the UK, it's required to study chemistry if you want to study medicine. And because lots of young women are brought up being told they have to be doctors, they study chemistry and then they realize this is actually a pretty awesome subject, so they should go and do that at university. But then when you go through, you realize that not many women stick around to become professors. So only about 9% of our professorial staff in the UK in chemistry are women. And this is all in a really good report from the Royal Society of Chemistry. So if you haven't seen this great report, it looks at what we need to do as a research sector to try and improve inclusivity. But beyond just the underrepresentation of women, we have an underrepresentation of people from other historically excluded groups. Only about 4.8% of undergrad chemists are Black in the UK. And actually, if you look at professor level, 0% according to official statistics of our chemistry professors are Black. Actually, if you read this fantastic report from the Royal Society of Chemistry, you find that there is actually one single Black professor of chemistry in the entire of the UK. He's at Nottingham. He's an absolutely incredible man. And he talks in this of his experiences in trying to access grants and leadership opportunities. So, you know, the UK has done a bit to improve the representation of women at undergrad, not enough to support them throughout their career. And then we're really struggling in other aspects of identity and other personal characteristics. I think there's a lot we need to do about this. We need to start earlier. We need to think about how people access and are aware of science and engage with it throughout their high school and their university degree. We need to also improve awareness of the incredible people who study science. I've been trying to do this for a while. I was doing an awful lot of this. And then I thought, actually, I need to do more to tell the stories of the incredible women leaders we have. So I started this big project in writing about women scientists for Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a really interesting platform to try and do science communication on. And that's because it's used by everyone in the world. So it's used by people and their families. It's used by home assistants. If you ever ask a question to Siri or to Amazon Alexa or to Google Home, they go to Wikipedia for the answer first. It's used by teachers and academics. It's used by policymakers. It's used by journalists, and it's used by scientists. So we really have a responsibility to make sure that everything critical and important is on Wikipedia. But unfortunately, Wikipedia, despite feeling quite complete, has really huge gaps. If you look at the representation of women in the biographies on Wikipedia, only about 19% of the biographies are of women. So of all of the biographies, only 19% are about women. And that's terrible. This is for English language Wikipedia. If you want to explore other languages, you can go to this handy little link. We know that people from other historically excluded groups fare worse. So fewer than 1 in 10 of the biographies on English language Wikipedia are about Black people. And anything to do with science is really poorly represented compared to other aspects that could be on there. So you'll have a whole bunch of pages about every single song on a Destiny's Child album, but you won't have many pages about women scientists, particularly women chemists, and particularly women chemists from other intersecting minority groups. So I started this project at the beginning of 2018 to write the Wikipedia biographies of women scientists, and I've been doing this every single day for the last 5 years. It's been going really well. I've learned so many awesome things and about so many awesome people, and I'm nearly at 1900 pages, so that will be a huge cause for celebration when it happens. But the most incredible things happen when you start documenting these stories. This is an amazing mathematician called Gladys West. She was born in 1930 in Virginia, and she went to a historically Black college and university before working in high school teaching maths. She ended up working for the US government, where she did the early mathematical calculations for GPS. And, you know, GPS is now kind of fundamental to our smartphones and satellite navigation. When I put Gladys West's page on Wikipedia, there's very little about her on the internet, and she was kind of 89 years old and getting nowhere near the recognition that she should be. But this was up for a few months, and then the BBC put her in their top 100 women in the world. The US Air Force inducted her to their Hall of Fame. The Guardian wrote a huge profile about her. The following year, the Royal Academy of Engineering, a big engineering society in the UK, gave her their Prince Philip Medal and Prize, which has never before gone to a woman, which is quite something. And then about 1 year ago, I was helping a tech company with something, and they managed to set up a Zoom between me and Gladys West, which was just, you know, absolute highlight of my year. It was so cool. And actually, you know, she continues to be sensational. People make artwork of her. We found all of these incredible pictures of her from early in her career. And I think, you know, it's one thing to say we don't have enough fantastic women scientists, because we definitely don't. But I think we all collectively need to do more to honor and celebrate the ones that we do have. Something I've been working on alongside Wikipedia is really thinking about who we nominate for awards and honours. The Royal Society of Chemistry have actually done a big project on looking at their awards and how they allocate them. And they've changed a lot of their awards to being team prizes rather than individual prizes, recognising that science is usually a team effort. You know, a group of us do the work I do. A group of people go out and enable ocean missions or whatever. And we need to start recognising that. So I'd say, you know, Wikipedia is one thing, but really thinking about this prizes and this formal recognition is critical. I also really think something that we need to do alongside the leadership and the mentoring is think about the other skills that we provide scientists. We're seeing kind of globally a mass exodus of people at postdoc stage into industry, and we really need to think about what we're providing as academic institutions to keep them. There's various reasons that people might leave. I think that there's a lot of evidence now that women receive less support throughout their careers. I'll try and put a laser pointer on. They're less likely to be put forward for promotion. They're more likely to take on service roles, or, you know, in the case of some people, have to stay up until 11 p.m. doing breakfasts internationally, while their male counterparts get a lot more time for research. People from particular countries, global south, or people with specific names or women's names suffer worse in peer review and also being allocated science funding. And we really need to break down all of these quite entrenched systematic barriers within academic science. I've been thinking a lot about this, and particularly about these aspects of kind of the hidden curriculum. You know, how do you do peer review? How do you apply for science funding? So last summer I managed to get some money and join up with the Blackett Lab family, a group of Black physicists in the UK, to run a research school for Black physicists and engineers. And we just came up with the kind of perfect program that we'd want. And actually, I'm happy MIT are here, because we copied it entirely from MIT's Rising Stars program. Sorry, I put that in all of the mailing around about it. But we had the most incredible time, and I've actually since applied for a bunch of money to do this with L'Oreal and with the Royal Society of Chemistry. Something I just want to show that was really recent, but I did we did a fantastic program at SPIE, a big optics and photonics society meeting. So alongside the academic and the technical program, we had a big focus on increasing the representation of women and people from other historically excluded groups, and also improving the experience of people early in their careers. They had these family care grants, which offered to anyone who has caring responsibilities. We also had on site every day for graduate students and early career researchers, a place to check your resume. So we had a bench where you could go and be interviewed by someone who's really good on writing resumes. We had a place to get professional headshots. And to calm it, this was very American, but to calm everyone down at 4 p.m. every day, some rabbits and some puppies came along so that you could stroke them. But we also had an amazing professional development program. So every day we did a kind of lunch and learn around equity. And I'll show you one of the activities in a minute. We had an absolutely fantastic speaker come from Harvard. I don't know if you've had her to speak before, but Dr. Alexis Stokes, she's the Vice Dean for Equity and Diversity, and she gave a very incredible lunch and learn to lots of people in industry about what we could do. But we kind of had these amazing social activities focused on women in optics, on LGBTQ+ people, Black in photonics, every single day. And I think it kind of showed the students how much this meant to us as academics, but also how much it meant to the society. This very simple activity we did, I actually think everyone should do it in every institution, but we downloaded a bunch of different privileges. I can send it around to people if they're interested in afterwards. And there were actually 58 in total. This is just one example of one particular set of privileges. And they were things around sexuality, religion, ethnicity, gender. And for every privilege people identified with, they took one of these beads and they put it on their string. And then at the end of the event, we got people to go around and to look at their strings and compare it to other people. And you know what? I think it made a bunch of people who are quite awkward, you know, scientists are often quite hard to get them to talk to each other, but if they're doing an activity, they're quite good at it. But it also really, you know, publicly, but also quite privately made people reflect on the privilege they had. So I thought this was a really fantastic one to do. Just a few thoughts before I go. I think lots of people here have a lot of power to be able to do something. And I think something Dr. Alexis Stokes from Harvard taught us was don't just collect data, we've got to translate these statements into actions. You know, in the last few years, we've seen people coming out against we've seen the Me Too movement, we've seen Black Lives Matter. We've got to stop making these kind of ethical principle guided statements and start acting upon it. I take very much into account that note earlier about different cultures intersecting. I love this idea of having a lab manual. This was Mariam Ali's article in Nature a few years ago, but showing how you have to kind of guide people to say how we expect people to interact with each other in a lab, and how we expect people to be polite to one another. To think about how you manage meetings to make sure everyone in that room is getting an opportunity to talk and that their ideas are being fairly heard. To look for things like bias in your letters of recommendation. These can be extraordinarily gender biased and ethnically biased, so to avoid that. To discuss some of these really important papers that are coming out. I don't know if you all saw this letter last year in the Journal of Physical Chemistry Letters. It was kind of going through this conversation that's happening a lot in academia at the moment about free speech and inclusivity. It's really perfectly written and gives you a huge amount more literature to look up and to read afterwards. But I like the idea that you don't just have your kind of technical journal club, you also discuss these kind of things too. And if you have some kind of capacity to act as a mentor to do that, I'm about to get kicked out of this room, but I do feel we have this big responsibility to leave science in a better place than when we found it, whether that's through outreach and public engagement, whether that's nominating people for prizes, speaking up, and making sure that you elevate others as you climb up. And also, if you're constantly being given opportunity to kind of be prepared to give it up and give it to someone else, I think I'm going to stop talking there and say, yes, thank you for having me, and sorry for talking for so long.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wade. That was very inspirational and very, very amazing work you've done. Thank you so much. I'm now going to introduce our final speaker for the event. It is Dr. Philiswa Nomngongo. She is currently a professor at the University of Johannesburg and is a DSI NRF Research Chair in Nanotechnology for Water. She is a professor in the Environmental Analytical Chemistry section, the Faculty of Science. She also graduated with a BSc in Applied Chemistry with an honours and an MSc in Chemistry from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She completed her PhD in chemistry, specializing in analytical chemistry from the University of Johannesburg. She also holds a DSI NRF SAKI and nanotechnology for water and NRF Y1 rating. Her scientific career has been dedicated to solving different environmental problems in water quality and environmental protection. She held a postdoctoral position at UJ in an analytical chemistry lab with a focus on method development. During her postdoctoral studies, she received a L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science Sub-Saharan Regional Fellowship 2014 award. She recently won the DST Award for Women in Science, the University of Johannesburg Promising Young Researcher Award for Scientific Excellence, and the NSTF South 23 Award for Engineering Research Capacity Development. I now pass it over to her to give her presentation. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now I will not be showing a screen because I am using, it's complicated where I am, but I will just share my ideas, what I have. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for thinking of me and invite me to be part of this wonderful event. And I'm grateful to be here. And I think if I was not invited, maybe I won't be listening, but this is really a great opportunity for me. And it's the first time participating in this program. And I'm truly grateful. And what I want to talk about is, as a person I have passion in training young scientists. And there are things I learned as I go along, as a supervisor or as a person who mentors some young researchers. But first of all, for me to be able to achieve certain things that I've achieved, there are people who have set the path for most of us as women scientists. People that might not know that we are learning from them, but we look at them afar and say, this person has actually my role model. It's somebody that I look forward to see or to attend the talks or to listen to. And those people are the ones that made people like me, where you learn from a distance and say, this is something that I would like to take with me. For instance, I'll make an example with me. I never thought I would ever be a chemist, but one of the reasons I was a chemist is because when I was doing my first year, at that time there was one professor, and I did not know what a professor means, who was a woman. And I did not know as a first year who come from a disadvantaged background, who don't have a privilege to know most of the things. And you ask yourself, okay, what is a professor? But I would like to be a professor one day. But those people are the people that we look after, and they help us to take a certain direction. And their hard work, some of them, they work very hard to be where they are, and we don't see that. But that hard work and their accomplishment, it's what creates a platform for most of other young researchers. And it also helps us to follow the same path so that we can create legacy for the upcoming generation. And one thing that one would say most of the time when I have discussion with the people that I interact with, they always say there is so much that is done for women. And you wonder what is it that they are referring to, because there are still so many of us who are struggling with so many things, and we still face challenges that are even difficult for us to tackle sometimes. And one thing that I learned then from there is that in order for us to be able to carry out this kind of beautiful things that women researchers and other people are doing, is to make sure that we build networks that will help us make a space for others. And that's the main message that I have today, is that we should, in whatever we do, we should always remember that there is somebody behind who will be following you, somebody who would like to follow the steps that you are taking. So for us to do that, we need to build that platform. And how do we do that? Is to make sure that we support each other. And I think throughout the talks that we listened today, it was about supporting each other. And I think that is very important, because, for instance, if you live in your corner, there is nothing you can accomplish. And you can agree with me is that if you face the world alone, you will not achieve, because you only have your experience, but you don't know somebody else's experience. Sometimes you might be experiencing something and you speak to someone and say, okay, I've been in this environment, I've been in this situation, and this is how, or somebody helped me to overcome this. And that's where we need to look at it in that way, that instead of competing most of the time, we really need to try by all means to work together, to build each other. And when we build each other, we'll build a road that even the upcoming researchers will be able to walk the path. Yes, they will have their own challenges, but as they move, they will be able to solve the challenges that we might not be able to solve at the moment. But if we work together, we'll be able to achieve so many things that can be able to change the world. I always say, if there's one person that is strong in this world, is a woman, because there are so many things that a woman can do. And it means that we can also build this environment that allows inclusivity, as we heard here, an environment that builds leaders, an environment that builds mentors that will be able not to be selfish, but to be able to give their skills to others. And we would like to change things sometimes. And when you are alone, you cannot change, because your ideas are only yours. It's not many ideas that speak to the same problem. But when you come together and support each other and make this network of people that have the same goal, even though we have different views, but those different views will come together and give us a better path, rather than when I'm alone sitting in my office and think, how can I solve the problem, let's say, of water? But I can't. But if we come together, we can be able to solve those things like that. And also, another thing that I've learned is that to move alone is difficult, and there's always nice to sometimes when you do certain activities, when you are many of you together, it's easier and it takes at the end of the day. And now one thing that we also require to be able to do, as especially those who already have achieved, and they are, I think they have achieved it all, if there's such a word, is that sharing those experiences, sometimes even no matter how painful are the experiences with us as young researchers, it where you left, and you need to take an initiative as a person and go and build those networks. And because if you lastly, I think it's one thing that I also learned in my career is that hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay,
Yes.
I think I have network issues. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let me just allow me to try and sort it out.
No problem.
I think we can hear you better without the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. So I won't switch it on. So what I was saying before I saw the screen telling me so many things is that when we build the networks or develop networks, we build them based on the needs that we have sometimes, but also those networks help us to learn from others. Because if we don't learn from others and we don't interact from others, then we'll be stuck in one place. And being stuck in one place, you cannot grow, and sometimes we'll keep on complaining. So we need to go out there and be able to avail ourselves and ask for professional help, ask for people to mentor us, as we heard from the previous speakers, and also just observe the person that inspires you, because from there you can learn a lot by just seeing on how people are doing certain things. And we need to be also know that we don't want the scientific world to end with a certain group of people and say, okay, that age group were good scientists, but we want it to be something that continues for the rest of the time. And that means that as we are scientists, we need to be able to show our full passion for science. We need to show our creativity, and we need to show our innovation, and also share our knowledge. Those things, they will be able to inspire the people that come after us. They will be able to see this is something that I can follow. This is not just for people who maybe some people they think science is for a certain group of people, but we should be able to see it's not for a certain group of people, it's for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nomngongo. Thank you so much again to all our wonderful speakers for all their inputs on today's topic. I will now be doing the Q&A. We will be going a bit over time, so if any of you would like to leave, feel free to leave as well. Audience as well, please feel free to write your questions in the chat. So I will start with some questions that we got beforehand from registrations. So this is quite an involved question, but if you don't mind each giving one example of what the challenges that you as women have currently faced within the STEM industry. I think I'll start with Dr. Garson, as you are our first speaker. Oh, sorry, yeah, no worries. I think you are muted, sorry.
Yes, thank you. All right, sorry,
Okay.
just if you don't mind, it's midnight here. Just say the question again, and maybe Angeliki or Jessica can give an answer while I'm thinking about it.
No problem. Okay,
I
so
think probably that's the perfect example that Mary's male counterparts aren't having to stay up till midnight asking questions about the challenges they face being men in chemistry.
That's very true.
Thanks, Joe.
No, you gave the perfect one. I think probably that, you know, I think that what everyone here is doing is massively important, but it takes time and it takes emotional time to do it, and some groups don't have to do that or don't feel the responsibility to do it as much. I certainly feel like I've been very privileged and lucky and supported to get to where I am, and so I have that responsibility to give back. And I think others don't feel that. Not that they shouldn't, but they don't. I also think probably, you know, as I mentioned, there's quite a lot of evidence that women are discriminated against in peer review, in putting together funding proposals, and I suppose we've probably all felt that unconsciously, you know, without it being explicit, and certainly, you know, just being treated differently in meetings and things like that. I think probably everyone on this panel has experienced.
Thank you so much, Jess. Dr. Rigos?
Oh, there we go. Okay. So I guess for me, I would say the greatest challenge is balancing having children with a career. And the reason I say that is because I had my first child while I was a graduate student at MIT. And then finally, and I had children spaced out, 3 children. And when my youngest finally went to college and university, and I came to MIT for my new job at the MIT Tata Center, it was amazing that how much you could get done when you didn't have to run home and cook dinner and take care of children. And so I could never have done the job at MIT with 3 children at home. So it depends, I guess, on how much money you have and how much care you have and how supportive your spouse is. But I want to be involved with my children. So it is a balance. And so I say to you, if you just enjoy your children in your, you know, when they're young, and then when they grow up, you'll have lots of time to just work on your science again, or whatever it is that you're trying to do to change the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rigos. Dr. Nomngongo?
Thank you. It will look like I'm copying the last speaker, but I think we have a similar experience where, so I want to have more time for my research, but at the same time, I need to have time for my children, and that balance becomes a problem. And sometimes you will have a time when I would say, okay, I'll deal with the kids at this time. Then I would rather sacrifice my sleep so that I can be able to achieve the goal that I want to achieve. But that part it becomes really a problem, because someone else will not understand why now this person cannot deliver on a certain aspect of the work, because there are kids in this case. For instance, in my case, I have to make sure that I collect them from school, and then the time for collecting is also the time for lectures. And now I need to think, how am I going to balance that? How am I going to be in the lectures and then collect the kids at the same time? But as most of the time, you try to find ways and you get some balance, but for me, it's a big challenge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nomngongo. Yes, Dr. Garson?
I might make a comment there that I think that, you know, there's institutional obligation to actually address those sorts of issues and ensure that there isn't a conflict of work versus caring duties. And an enlightened leader in an institution is going to be sensitive to comments from, particularly from female faculty, about flexible working hours, part-time working being valued as much as full-time working, and that as we move, and particularly of course with people being able to work more from home, it's almost should be a surprise that our academic institutions and industry are still as inflexible as they are. And I think we've just got to speak out more about it, to be honest. I don't see any other way around that. And that's beholden on people like me.
Very true, very true. Thank you so much. On to another question. Do you think women have to provide more evidence of competence than men? What is your experiences regarding that? I think we'll start with Dr. Nomngongo.
I think because of the stereotypes that will always most of the time be there and come in, and sometimes even if it's not spoken, as women we always have to work an extra mile to show that we can do it. And even if it's not really, there is a communication about that, but we will make sure that at least we can, we prove, we always have to prove that we can do it.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. Dr. Garson, any thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, the answer, of course, is yes, but we'd all like the answer to be no. And I have to say that I have sat on panels in my university where there were a man and a woman who we agreed were equally qualified, and against that background, the position went to the woman, not to the man. That was an enlightened dean, and I congratulated him afterwards. And yeah, so it can happen, but I think actually we were talking about this morning. The place where you really make a difference in terms of recognizing competency is if you have an enlightened panel and they set up a separate, when you're developing the shortlist, you know, you've got 50 applicants and you need to pick 8 of them for the shortlist. You pick separate lists for men and women at that stage. So you're sifting through and finding the cohort of the 3 or 4 strong women, and you're sifting through and finding the cohort of 3 or 4 strong men. So of course it's implicit that there should be equal numbers. Then when that group are interviewed or taken further, the women's qualities come through. So again, that's got to be a sector change. But that was an idea that emerged this morning in our breakfast in Brisbane that I thought was really worth following up on with university and industrial environments.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Dr. Rigos, any thoughts?
I agree with the other panelists. You definitely have to be more highly qualified, work harder, at least so far, in order to get to the same spot.
Very true. Okay, due to time constraints, I will ask the last question. So in terms of the previous question, do you think having a quota helps? As male colleagues think promotions are thanks to gender rather than accomplishments. Would a quota help prevent that, for example, in terms of like hiring male to female? Any thoughts?
I would say no, because I know of examples of a woman who was offered a woman-only lectureship at an Australian university, and she came from the States. And when she found out that it was a quota position, she declined. So unfortunately, I think it probably doesn't. I think it might be okay in things like maths and physics, but I think what I'm saying is that for chemistry, I don't think it works, And I'd like us to be pursuing this alternative approach of having parallel shortlists. Because the evidence is when a person gets to present at interview and do research presentations, that their full potential comes through. It's getting to be at the top of the pile on the table. And so in a sense, what I was describing to you there was a quota just in shortlisting, but not in terms of the overall position.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the other panelists?
I have a similar thought. I would say no, because if sometimes one person will think I got the job because it's a quota, but now I want to get the job because I qualify to get that job.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, and because the problem is that you have the potential to carry that label around with you for the rest of your academic career, and that should not be the case at all.
Very true. Thank you so much. Thank you again to all our speakers for joining us. Thank you again for joining us at such late times, especially for Dr. Garson. I'm now going to give it back to Eva to do the closing. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and for all the speakers and the attendees. So diversity is really one of the core values of IYCN. We are committed to celebrating diversity, and hence we also created a committee for equity, diversity, and inclusion, because we believe that a network like the IYCN can only succeed if everyone can participate on an equal level to it. Next slide. Yeah, so after hearing all these interesting ideas and thoughts today, the question might be, what can you do to help diversity and to further help to empower women in chemistry? For example, you can reach out and exchange your experiences and expand your horizons. You can become a mentor to younger scientists or students. I know that for women sometimes it's a little bit harder, but you have to believe in yourself that you are really good enough to be a mentor and to help your fellow colleagues. You can encourage leadership opportunities and recognition for women in your organization. And of course, it's important to keep the conversation going throughout the year, to not only focus today on the Global Women Breakfast, on the role of women in science, but to really continue working with it for the upcoming years. Next slide, please. Then we would like to also shortly advertise the 52nd IUPAC General Assembly, where also several IYCN members will be present, and there is a dedicated program developed for young scientists. So it will be a very large conference, and the deadline for the abstracts is the 15th of February. And also at this conference, we will make sure that IYCN further promotes and celebrates the diversity, and that everyone gets the position there or can contribute to the conference. So with that, I would like to thank all our speakers again, and also the audience for attending. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, very enjoyable. A lovely end to a special day.